It's been over 35 years since Nintendo's classic platformer Super Mario Bros. Side-scrolled into our world. And across those glorious 3.5 decades, Nintendo have treated us to an absolute masterclass in action platforming. From the iconic level design of Super Mario Bros. World 1-1, through the groundbreaking 3D action of Super Mario 64, to the ever-varied capture mechanics of Super Mario Odyssey, Nintendo's flagship franchise has constantly been evolving.
Let's go!
And so today I'm going to chart that evolution, from the series' 1985 origins through to its status as one of the most iconic and popular franchises in all of gaming. This is the evolution of Mario. While Super Mario's Odyssey began back in 1985, the origins of the Italian plumber are actually rooted earlier in a certain sailor man. Back in 1981, Nintendo tasked Shigeru Miyamoto with creating a game around the popular American cartoon. Miyamoto obliged and designed a game that saw Popeye scaling ladders to rescue olive oil from the evil Brutus. When it transpired that Nintendo didn't actually have the rights to Popeye, Miyamoto had to think on the fly to create new characters for his game. Brutus became the iconic titular ape, Donkey Kong. Olive oil became a lady called Lady before being upgraded to Pauline, and well, Popeye became Nintendo's famous mascot, a squat mustachioed man called Jumpman? While Jumpman seemed like an apt, if perhaps a little too literal name for their new mascot, the name sadly didn't stick, but the mechanics certainly did, and it came to define the character, the franchise, and hell, even the whole genre. Jumpman eventually became Mario in 1982, when the name started appearing in promotional materials for Donkey Kong arcade cabinets, allegedly a tribute to the landlord of Nintendo of America's first HQ in Seattle. And the name was cemented even further in Donkey Kong Jr., which, interestingly, is the only instance where Mario is the villain in a game he appears in. Fast forward to 1983 and Mario became the star of his own game. Mario Bros. Was an incredibly simplistic action platformer by Nintendo's future standards, ostensibly playing out like a wave-based combat game, where Mario, or Luigi, were tasked with killing off critters by hitting the floor beneath them before kicking them off screen. It's safe to say the mechanic did not catch on, but 2 years later, Mario returned for one of the most defining moments in gaming history. Super Mario Bros. Released for the NES in 1985 and laid the foundations for everything that would come to define the franchise. At the time, the NES was largely populated with single-screen games, much like Mario Bros., but Super Mario Bros. Introduced a right-scrolling movement that matched the player as they moved through the level. It brought a real sense of adventure and forward progression, and coined the term side-scroller, which would become the benchmark for the genre for years to come. Coupled alongside this new side-scrolling dynamic was a clearly defined structure too. The game was mapped out across 8 worlds, each made up of 4 levels, for a total of 32 courses. The game eschewed the darker aesthetics and New York setting of Mario Bros., relocating the franchise to the brighter hues of the Mushroom Kingdom, and introduced a new antagonist for our portly plumber, Bowser, or King Koopa. From a gameplay perspective, the game was designed to build upon the satisfaction that players got from jumping over obstacles in both Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., a gameplay mechanic that Super Mario Bros. Would literally run with. The controls were perfectly pitched, and with World 1-1, the player had the ideal playground with which to experiment in. And then there were the power-ups that have now become synonymous with the franchise. Firstly, there was the dubiously titled Magic Mushroom, which turned regular Mario into Super Mario and granted him the ability to take an extra hit. Then there was the Fire Flower, which gifted Mario the ability to throw fireballs. And lastly, there was the Starman ability, which sadly has nothing to do with Bowie and gave Mario a brief stint of invincibility. Super Mario Bros. Was a huge hit, selling well over 40 million units worldwide, and it's not hard to see why. With groundbreaking gameplay, an eye-catching aesthetic, and some of the most iconic music in all of video games, Super Mario Bros. Became an instant classic and kickstarted a beloved new franchise. A franchise that would get a sequel almost immediately. But wait, here's where things get a little confusing. Okay, so Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels was technically speaking the second installment in the franchise, as it was released for the Famicom Disk System in Japan in 1986 under the name Super Mario Bros. 2. Although do not confuse it with the other Super Mario Bros. 2, which released across the world in 1988, and we will get to that in due time. Right, back to 1986. The Lost Levels is basically more of the original Super Mario Bros., only far more challenging. The core gameplay remained much the same from the previous installment, but the difficulty had been ramped up considerably for an extra challenging experience. It was a far larger game too, spanning 52 courses across 13 worlds, but good luck getting through all of those. Then there were a handful of new little treats for players too, most notably the introduction of a poisonous mushroom, which was the first power-up you encountered in the game and, well, killed you. And if that isn't a statement, I don't know what is. Okay, now for the other Super Mario Bros. 2, which came out for the NES in 1988 and threw out nearly everything that players had come to associate with the franchise. For starters, you might think to jump on the head of the first enemy you encounter in order to kill them, right? Well, no. That's because Super Mario Bros. 2 is a Mario game in disguise. This sequel was actually based on Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, or Dream Factory Heart Racing Panic, and neither of those are easy to say, which was a Japan-only release. It was adapted to fit into the Mario franchise, and well, that's why it feels so different to the rest of the series. You see, Super Mario Bros. 2, or Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, was designed as a harvesting action game, which saw you stand atop enemies and items and root them out from the ground, which feels like the exact opposite of the classic gameplay that players saw in Super Mario Bros. This slightly off-kilter sensibility was reflected in the game's plot too, which took place in a dream world called Subcon and saw Mario sucked into a quest to defeat a regal frog called Wart. Yeah, it's weird. The game was still a lot of fun and gave you the opportunity to play as 4 different characters with varying abilities. There was Mario, who naturally had average abilities all round, Luigi, who could pump his little legs to get a little more airtime, Princess Toadstool, who could float in the air for a few seconds, and then Toad, who was just a bit rubbish really. Super Mario Bros. 2 was a huge success in the States and was eventually reverse imported back to Japan, where it had to be renamed as Super Mario USA because Japan already had a Super Mario Bros. 2. Okay, I promise you the confusion stops here. 1989's Super Mario Land saw the franchise go handheld for the first time, and the transition to the small screen, for the large part, was pretty smooth. Released as a launch title for Nintendo's fancy new Game Boy, Super Mario Land put the plumber in the palm of your hand, that sounds weird, and successfully adapted a lot of the classic Super Mario Bros. Gameplay to the smaller screen. It was a far shorter game than previous iterations, featuring just 4 worlds and 12 courses, but it introduced Princess Daisy into the franchise for the first time and gave Mario a handful of new power-ups and abilities. In place of the Fire Flower was the Super Ball Flower, which saw Mario throwing Super Balls that would bounce around the level. But even better than that were the vehicles, the Marine Pop and the Sky Pop, basically a submarine and a plane that pretty much turned the game into a shoot-'em-up. Okay, so if Super Mario Bros. 2 was the weird second album, Super Mario Bros. 3 is the band back to the absolute peak of its powers. Released for the NES in 1990, this 4th console entry was a huge technical leap forward for the plucky NES. Super Mario Bros. 3 introduced a whole load of new characters, power-ups, and enemies into the franchise for the first time. Most notably the unique end-of-world bosses, the Koopalings, the explosive Bob-Ombs, and the tenacious Boo, all of which would become series mainstays. On the power-ups front, Mario Bros. 3 went mad, introducing Raccoon Mario, Tanuki Mario, Frog Mario, Shoe Mario. Yeah, that last one was a bit weird. But chief among all the new stuff was a brand new world map that gave a far greater sense of scope and scale to the adventure, and allowed you to pick your own route through each world to the Koopalings castle at the end of each section. Super Mario Bros. 3 was a fantastic evolution of the franchise, and was enormously popular to boot, selling well over 17 million copies for the NES, and even spawning its own Saturday morning cartoon as well.
Nasty time is over, Koopa! Get those Goombas back in that cage!
Not only did it have a huge impact on the Super Mario franchise, but its non-linear structure had a huge impact on gaming as a whole, giving gamers a greater sense of choice to move backwards and forwards through the levels at their own pace. How did Nintendo follow up making one of the greatest NES games of all time? Well, simple. They made Super Mario World, one of the greatest SNES games of all time. With a more powerful console, Nintendo conjured up a whopping 16 bits, and just look at those glorious pixels. Super Mario World was a far more vivid and bright adventure which saw the Plumber brothers head on holiday to the tropical paradise of Dinosaur Land, meeting a key ally in the process. Yeah, Super Mario World introduced us to Yoshi, the trusty dino steed of Mario, for the first time in the franchise, and well, he's pretty much been a mainstay ever since. While Super Mario World expanded on the series' now established formula in relatively minor ways, it was a vibrant platforming adventure that offered up some of the franchise's greatest level design to date. Super Mario World gave us labyrinthine haunted houses, joyous free-running levels that allowed Mario to literally soar into the sky with the new power-up, the Cape Feather, and tying it all together was a gorgeous overworld that was filled to the brim with secrets for the players to discover. Following on from Mario's first handheld foray, Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins released in 1992 and was a far larger adventure than its predecessor. This handheld sequel featured 32 levels and had a more sophisticated art style, based on the recent release of Super Mario World for the SNES. But most importantly, it introduced reprehensible Mario pretender Wario into the franchise canon for the first time. Following on from the precedent set in Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, 6 Golden Coins offered even more freedom to players, allowing you to tackle any of the 6 worlds from the get-go. On offer you had the Macro Zone, which saw a tiny Mario fend off attacks from giant ants, the Spooky Pumpkin Zone, which had the atmosphere of a haunted house carnival ride, and the Space Zone, which saw Mario don a spacesuit and jet off into the stars for the first time, a sight that would become very familiar within the Galaxy games later on in the franchise. If Super Mario World was an evolution of the classic Mario formula, Super Mario 64 was a full-blown revolution. We all know now that Mario 64 basically reinvented the wheel when it came to 3D action games, but when you look back, it truly was a groundbreaking game in many ways. Not only did it shift the plumber to the third dimension, but the N64's mad controller gave Mario a far greater suite of platforming moves, like the triple jump and the wall jump. And then there was the roaming camera that would follow Mario around to pick up the best angle of the action, cutely contextualized within the game's world as being filmed by Lakitu himself. And on the gameplay front, Super Mario 64 basically threw out everything that you'd come to know and love about the franchise's now classic formula. No longer were you walking on tightropes when you were down to regular Mario, as you had a health wheel which you could regenerate by collecting coins. In fact, pretty much all the standard power-ups were gone. Instead of magic mushrooms and fire flowers, Mario 64 gave us the iconic Metal Mario and the exhilarating Wing Mario. Then there was the game's structure, which had completely been overhauled. The semi-linear overworlds from the 2D Mario games were largely gone in favour of a grand open-world rendition of the Mushroom Castle. Mario 64 gave us its iconic worlds in the form of paintings hung on the walls of the castle, which Mario would jump through to enter each level and scour for power stars. The more stars you collected, the further you could advance through the game. It was a truly refreshing structure which put the exploration centre stage by giving you the choice of how you navigated through the game. Super Mario 64, as we all now know, was a huge success. Not only was it the best-selling game on the N64, shifting over 12 million copies, but it also set the benchmark for how 3D action games were to be designed for decades to come. Here we go! Fans had to wait a massive 6 years for the follow-up to Super Mario 64, when Super Mario Sunshine finally released in 2002 for the GameCube. While it didn't garner the same levels of acclaim as its predecessor, Sunshine was still a colourful and joyous expansion of the 3D side of the Mario franchise, that took the plumber on holiday to the gorgeous Isle Delfino. Front and centre was the unique power-up, the Flood, which gave Mario the ability to hose water everywhere, a trick that helped him clean up all the muck caked around Delfino Plaza. Now boys, don't touch that stuff! And a gameplay mechanic that surely inspired the Nintendo shoot-'em-up Splatoon. Flood was a fun, if chaotic addition to the 3D Mario experience and could be upgraded with extra power-ups like the hover nozzle. Mario Sunshine expanded on the formula from Mario 64 and saw the eponymous plumber tracking down shine sprites from various worlds attached to the central hub of Delfino Plaza. While the game wasn't the success sales-wise that Nintendo were after, it has since become a cult favourite among Mario aficionados. the 6-year wait for a new 3D Mario felt long, it was 14 years before we got our next 2D Mario adventure, fittingly titled New Super Mario Bros. Released in 2006 on the Nintendo DS, New Super Mario Bros. Saw the franchise's return to its 2D roots and the classic formula that Nintendo had perfected with Super Mario World. But for all its familiarity, this latest 2D outing offered a fair few twists on the classic formula. Firstly, there was the influence of the 3D titles, which saw some key moves added into the 2D arena, notably the ground pound and the wall jump, which came in really handy when you had to save yourself from falling down a hole. Then there was the gimmicky new power-ups, including the ability to turn the central plumber into Mega Mario for a quick shot at catharsis, or Mini Mario to access secret areas. Not only was New Super Mario Bros. A huge sales success, selling over 30 million copies to date, but it completely revived the 2D formula and kickstarted a new side franchise in the burgeoning Mario canon.
That's so nice!
A year later, Mario escaped to the one place that hadn't been corrupted by capitalism.
Space!
Yeah, Super Mario Galaxy launched in 2007 for the Wii and saw Mario rocket into the stars for his third 3D game to date. Galaxy largely continued the 3D series' structure, featuring a central hub, this time in the form of the relaxing vibes of Comet Observatory, and 120 power stars to find across the cosmos. Aside from introducing us to Rosalina and Luma, Galaxy evolved the 3D wing of the Mario franchise in a few small but notable ways. First, there was a raft of new power-ups, including Bee Mario, Boo Mario, and Spring Mario, but then there was the gravity-defying physics system that led to some incredibly inventive level design. There were spherical planets, black holes, and exhilarating flights through the stars that made Galaxy feel like a refreshing twist on the 3D formula. As a Wii title, Super Mario Galaxy made use of the Wii Remote sensors. You could attack enemies by shaking the Wii Remote, or you could collect star bits by simply pointing the remote at the screen. And then there was a multiplayer of sorts for the first time in a 3D Mario, although it was largely just your mate trying to collect star bits with a second Wii Remote. Super Mario Galaxy launched to unanimous acclaim, much of it heaped at its innovative gameplay, level design, and fantastic soundtrack. The game would go on to sell nearly 13 million copies, scoop up countless Game of the Year awards, and would eventually lead to an equally acclaimed sequel that I'll get to very shortly. But first, Nintendo made a return to their re-established 2D Mario series, with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which released in 2009 for the Wii. This Wii sequel was largely more of the same that players saw back in 2006's New Super Mario Bros., but it added one key element to the 2D franchise: multiplayer. For the first time in 2D Mario, 4 players could race through courses as Mario, Luigi, or if you were really unlucky, a blue or a yellow Toad. It made for a fun and chaotic experience where players could team up to uncover out-of-reach secrets and simultaneously ground-pound enemies. Outside of the multiplayer, there were a handful of new power-ups as well, including Ice Mario, Propeller Mario, and my personal favourite, Penguin Mario, because, well, penguins are awesome. New Super Mario Bros. Wii was another massive success for the 2D side of the franchise, selling just a shade over 30 million copies.
Oh yeah, Mario time!
For a game that was originally an expansion pack codenamed Super Mario Galaxy More, Super Mario Galaxy 2 was exactly that, more of Super Mario Galaxy. Which, to be clear, was no bad thing. Sure, taken at face value, Mario Galaxy 2 looked like it just iterated on what had been done in the original game, but looks were deceiving. Galaxy 2 perfected its predecessor's gameplay and introduced ideas that were left on the original's cutting room floor. Chief among those lost mechanics was the reintroduction of Yoshi, which gave you the ability to gobble up enemies and items using the Wii Remote to point Yoshi's extendable tongue around. Then there were a smattering of new power-ups that included a spin drill item that allowed you to drill down through the core of a planet, a Cloud Mario outfit that allowed you to conjure up cloud platforms out of nowhere, and the Rock Mario power-up that turned the plumber into a big hulking boulder, all of which offered unique gameplay within some incredibly inventive level design. And then instead of the Comet Observatory from the first game, we got a spaceship in the form of a giant Mario head that acted as the hub world for Mario's adventure, filled with its own share of secrets to discover. While Super Mario Galaxy 2 didn't sell as well as its predecessor, many believed it to be the better game, mainly due to its bolder ideas, challenging level design, and fantastic bosses. And it was the very first Mario title to claim a perfect 10 out of 10 score right here at GameSpot. The next handheld Mario game came in the form of 2011 Super Mario 3D Land, which launched for Nintendo's flashy new handheld, the 3DS. Bridging the gap between the 2D and 3D Mario pillars, Super Mario 3D Land offered up a less challenging adventure that aimed to appeal to those who had a hard time playing the 3D games. The game was structured like a more traditional 2D Mario title, with players venturing through a level to get to the goal pole at the end, but it played with a more free-form movement that allowed players to make use of many of Mario's abilities from the 3D games. Then there were the tails. There were tails everywhere. And this was all thanks to the return of the Super Leaf, which turned Mario into Tanuki Mario and allowed him to clobber enemies with his tail and float through the air. But it wasn't only Mario had a tail, there were tail Goombas, tail Boos, there was a big old tail tree, hell even the game's logo had a tail. While it didn't really utilise the 3DS's capabilities all that much, I mean the 3D itself was largely optional, Super Mario 3D Land was a fun little game, which sold nearly 13 million copies and led to a vastly more substantial sequel 2 years later for the Wii U. Mario had the Midas touch in the third entry into the new Super Mario Bros. Series, which saw levels littered with a way above average amount of gold coins. Many of the power-ups introduced for this game were in service of making Mario a millionaire. There was the Gold Mario power-up, which gave Mario the ability to fling about gold fireballs and turn pretty much everything into coins. And then there was the Gold Block, which gave Mario a big old gold brick for a head and spawned up to 100 coins as you moved through levels. While New Super Mario Bros. 2 didn't garner the same level of acclaim as other entries into the series, it was still a success for Nintendo, selling way over 13 million copies, which was well over double what the other New Super Mario Bros. Game that released in 2012 sold. Yeah, 2012 saw two new Super Mario Bros. Games, as the Wii U saw the release of New Super Mario Bros. U. One-upping New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the Wii U sequel had multiplayer where 5 players could play simultaneously, 4 playing on the TV, with the 5th using the Wii U's gamepad to interact with the game's environment by controlling certain mechanisms and stopping enemies in their tracks. While the game largely iterated on what had been seen before in the new Super Mario Bros. Series, it came with a raft of new, if minor, features. On the power-up front, players got Flying Squirrel Mario, which, while fun to play as, felt like Nintendo was starting to reach the limits of their imagination. Then there were the Baby Yoshis, each of which carried their own special abilities, which you could carry through levels. And then the world map itself saw some slight enhancements, opting for one larger map much like that seen in Super Mario World. As I mentioned before, New Super Mario Bros. U was not as big a success as its small screen counterpart, largely due to the lackluster performance of the Wii U. But Nintendo came back swinging with one of the Wii U's greatest games just a year later. " 2013 saw the release of Super Mario 3D World, and this one was all about cats, which instantly made it the game of the year. Ain't that right? Super Mario 3D World expanded on its small screen predecessor and then some. Aside from the introduction of Cat Mario, which was the greatest power-up in all Mario, don't at me. 3D World made use of pretty much every bell and whistle on the Wii U, had a plethora of new power-ups, and even included 4-player multiplayer for the first time in a 3D Mario game. The multiplayer in particular was a high point for the sequel, with each of the characters having their own unique abilities that made each play session uniquely frenetic. From a gameplay standpoint, 3D World played in a similar manner to 3D Land. Levels were structured like a traditional 2D Mario, but you had the freedom to roam anywhere, and even climb walls if you were Cat Mario, which by the way was the best power-up if I hadn't already mentioned. There was a massive 117 courses in total, with each world drip-feeding new mechanics and power-ups across ever-evolving courses. And 3D World even gave us the isometric platforming of Captain Toad, before Nintendo spun those levels off into a completely separate game. Sadly, 3D World remains one of the least played Mario titles, thanks largely to it debuting on the Wii U. It sold so poorly, in fact, that here in the UK it debuted in the charts at number 14, just behind a little game called Knack. The British public sure did Mario dirty with that one, I can only apologise. After 30 years of making Mario games, Nintendo finally packed it in and just asked players to make their own levels. Super Mario Maker was a meaty Mario level editor that launched for the Wii U in 2015 and basically played out as a greatest hits reel for 2D Mario. Mario Maker basically handed the keys to the Mushroom Kingdom over to players and let them create and publish their own levels across 4 unique styles: Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and New Super Mario Bros. It allowed you to create a whole slate of deviously difficult levels, as long as you could finish your own mad creation that is, and offered a huge wealth of options with which to do so. Super Mario Maker was the perfect 30th birthday present to the fans, and they responded in kind by creating over 7 million courses. By 2016, Mario had been on his fair share of handhelds, but he'd never been on a smartphone. Super Mario Run was a revolution of sorts in its own little way, but not really for the game itself. It was a small revolution because it was the first official Mario title developed for a non-Nintendo console. When it came to the gameplay, Mario Run didn't really evolve the formula. In fact, it pretty much devolved it back to its basics. Taking inspiration from classic auto-runners like Cannabolt and Jetpack Joyride, Mario Run saw the controls pared right back to just a simple touch of the screen. If you touched the screen, Mario jumped. If you held the screen for longer, he'd jump for longer. And well, that was largely it. Shigeru Miyamoto said it was even designed that way so you could play with one hand and eat a hamburger with the other, which is just the most wholesome Miyamoto thing ever. With the Wii U confined to the trash can of history, RIP, Nintendo moved forwards with arguably their greatest console to date, and also arguably their greatest Mario game to date too. Super Mario Odyssey felt like a full-on celebration of every aspect of the franchise that had come so far. Employing a sandbox structure to its gameplay, Odyssey crafted a gameplay experience that was equal parts new and refreshing and quintessentially Mario, and at the centre of it all was the capture mechanic. Mario Odyssey introduced Cappy into the franchise, a cute little character that took up residence in Mario's hat, and gave players the ability to capture a whole range of enemies, characters, and items with spectacular results. You could capture over 100 different things across Odyssey, a large portion of them classic Mario enemies from across the series, and in one slightly creepy instance, a human in New Donk City. Courses and worlds were a thing of the past, as Mario Odyssey introduced kingdoms into the franchise, expansive open-world sandboxes that were littered with power moons for players to hunt for. Unlike previous 3D Mario games, you weren't kicked back to a central hub world after you collected a moon, which allowed you to uncover secrets at your own pace. These varied sandbox arenas were full of life and colour too, whether it was the steampunk gardens of the Wooded Kingdom, the pop art aesthetics of the Luncheon Kingdom, or the desert vistas of the Sand Kingdom. Super Mario Odyssey was a huge success for Nintendo, becoming the fastest selling Mario game since New Super Mario Bros. Wii almost a decade before. This was no doubt powered by the success of the Switch, but Odyssey was also a huge success critically, with many saying it felt like the spiritual successor to Super Mario 64, and us here at GameSpot slapping another 10 out of 10 on a Mario game, only the second in the franchise after Super Mario Galaxy 2. The most recent main series release into the Mario franchise was the follow-up to 2015's Super Mario Maker, which basically just expanded on the brilliance of the original. Aside from a raft of new items, enemies and power-ups, there were 3 major developments in Mario Maker 2. The first was a brand new course style that was based on the Super Mario 3D World aesthetic, and offered unique gameplay mechanics within its level design. Secondly, after numerous requests from fans, Nintendo gave players the opportunity to create their very own world maps too. And lastly, and perhaps most substantially, Mario Maker 2 included a story campaign, which offered up over 100 Nintendo-created courses for players to tear through. Mario Maker 2 was an even bigger success than its predecessor, largely thanks to the larger player base on the Switch, selling over 5 million copies to date. The Super Mario franchise has come a long way since it started life as a potential Popeye licensed game. Thank God that never happened. From its 2D roots through to its groundbreaking arrival in 3D and then back again, Mario has been one of the backbones of gaming since he first debuted in the 80s, and here's hoping he keeps innovating for many long years to come. And that is the evolution of the Super Mario franchise. 35 years of memories summed up in 30 minutes. I've really enjoyed going back through this amazing franchise for its 35th birthday, and I really hope you enjoyed watching this video too. Let me know your favourite Mario game in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.